Well, I suppose we should just get right into it. You guys remember how the beginning starts?
Sure.
All right. I'm Martin Wallace.
I'm Darren McCarthy.
I'm Dan Fury.
And this is The Fundamentals. Welcome. What are we talking about today, guys?
Scientology.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'm really going out on a limb to say that it's a lightning rod kind of topic. I mean, it's known by most people probably in some way. I mean, you've heard of Tom Cruise. You've probably heard of Scientology, at least at that level, like on the surface.
It's a really fascinating kind of subject in the sense that there's so much information available and there's so much kept hidden. And there's such a priority from the church to keep things hidden.
Yeah, that was kind of annoying to do the research. I kind of having the feeling that you're hiding stuff that makes me not trust anything you're saying. That anything that you are saying, I don't trust you, and that made it hard to not just hear every negative attack on the church and go, "That's probably true."
Yeah,
that was hard to stay.
Even though there's got to be a lot of speculation.
Yeah, for sure.
There's truth in it somewhere.
Yeah, I still, having said that, kind of think that most of the detraction and the attacks on the church were more accurate about reality.
Mm-hmm. A lot of what we know comes from court cases.
Yes.
Or evidence from legality issues.
Yeah.
Things presented as evidence in the court. And that's where we get the first real transparencies here. I think with a subject like this, it's really important for us to sort of show our references first. Where did we get all this information? Because there is so much available. And so for me, there was quite a bit of just straight Wikipedia stuff. And you take that with a grain of salt, but from what I've found, it's more unbiased than anything else I found. I think the Wikipedia page has done a really good job of getting rid of the naysayers as well as the propaganda. It is just kind of, this is the information we have.
Yeah.
My other source of information for everything that I know is from a book from John Attack called A Piece of Blue Sky. And he was a defector of Scientology. He was in Scientology in the mid-70s, was there for several years, several decades before he came out. And he started when he was 19, and he wrote a really in-depth analysis of not only the church itself, but L. Ron Hubbard's life and the inner workings as far as he could find. And that's really where I got all of my information.
Again, Wikipedia, basic searches. Also, I found this... a couple websites that were pretty interesting. One is xenu.net, which looks pretty fun.
I came across that one. It looks interesting.
And then there's something, this is part of xenu.net, Operation Clambake. It just has a lot of stats on the church. Apart from that, I also picked up a book called Going Clear, Scientology, Hollywood, and the Prison of Belief by Lawrence Wright. And that just came out in 2013.
A brand new one, huh?
Yeah. And Lawrence Wright, he also wrote a book on 9/11, I think, shortly after 9/11. I haven't read that, but that's his other claim to fame. Those I would say, are my primary. And I found quite a few documentaries on YouTube, just upload on YouTube, mostly from defectors from the church or just people.
BBC did a really good one.
BBC, their panorama program.
Yeah,
was my life or my life is Scientology or Scientology and Me, I think.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
I forget the title, but yeah, BBC had a couple sections. So everything we talk about will be coming from those sources, say.
Yeah, and as I am kind of serving as a listener by proxy, I of course referenced the classic South Park episode from 2005. Trapped in the Closet, which I would like to play a clip of for you now.
Let's do it.
Absolutely.
All right, now I'm just going to ask you a few questions. Just answer these questions as truthfully as you can, all right? Okay. Number 1, do you ever make remarks which you later regret?
Sure.
Uh-huh. Would you rather give orders than take them?
Yeah.
Do you ever whistle just for the fun of it? Okay, and finally, does life sometimes feel vague and confusing to you?
Yes.
Okay, Stan, well, that's it. That's the end of the personality test.
So how'd I do?
Well, I hate to tell you this, Stan, but you are one messed up kid.
Huh?
Yeah, I'm afraid that you are completely miserable and totally depressed.
I am? I didn't know that.
Well, there's certainly no question that you are a perfect candidate for Scientology. I think it can really make you happy again.
What do I do?
It's very simple. We just need $240.
And I think for better or worse, that has a big stamp on people's general understanding of Scientology at this point.
Absolutely. It was a
From that
really,
episode.
that episode probably brought the inner workings of things more to people's attention than, so otherwise you would have had to go search it out, but here was one of your favorite cartoons that did all the research for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that there's pretty much a cartoon representation of the alien story.
The space
that's
opera.
at the center, and they had to put a disclaimer. This is what Scientologists actually believe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is fantastic.
Although, did you guys come across Tommy Davis?
No.
He was like the spokesman for the church for quite a few years. And he's since kind of dropped out of the public eye.
Was he part of the Guardian office, or was he?
He was a Sea Org member.
Oh, okay.
We should explain all these things.
We will.
There's so many things.
We will.
There's so many weird little groups, like subgroups. But apparently he was Tom Cruise's handler, for representing the church.
Oh, weird.
And he was one of Tom Cruise's best buds.
Mm-hmm.
And his wife was Katie Holmes' handler. So they were.
Oh, just.
And if you look at a lot of press photos from from Katie Holmes' time being married to Tom Cruise, they were in the background quite often, and especially Tommy Davis' wife. I forget her name off the top of my head, but she's just right next to Katie Holmes all the time.
We had some fun double dates.
Oh,
you know?
didn't they? Didn't they ever? Some double auditing. But
this is just us and our handlers.
yeah. So during interviews and stuff, or having to defend the church or answer questions, as soon as Xenu or anything extraterrestrial or volcanoes, souls being blown up, this guy would just flip and just say, "No one knows what you're talking about. This is ridiculous. You sound like an idiot. You sound ridiculous." I mean, it just would shut it down. And people would be saying, "I'm reading this out of stuff from the church," but
I sound like an idiot. But
Yeah.
This is actually.
And I was kind of feeling for this. That's a tough job. Being the
sure.
PR. Oh,
They had to have an entirely separate department from the church.
Yeah.
To handle public relations like that, as
Yeah.
well as lawsuits and
Oh yeah.
any sort of criticism.
Oh yeah. If you're just getting out of law school, that's where to go for a job.
Yeah.
They are going to be busy. That's like you're printing your own money. Being a lawyer for Scientology, the Church of Scientology. So on South Park, when they say this is what Scientology is, actually, I would speculate that if you went up and asked anyone that says they're Scientologists, they would say that's ridiculous. They would shut that down.
Yeah.
Well, I think the important thing to realize here, and I think we should go through all of the steps leading up to that point. So that whole creation story, Xenu and the whole thing, isn't something that most Scientologists even know about.
Right.
Until long into their careers.
Or they're not told about it directly from the church until maybe they've heard about it, like all of us have.
So I think we should fully explain that story as it comes in the steps that you would take from being a pre-clear to getting to that. And there's a whole lot of verbiage that we have to go through here. So I think we can start at the beginning, really, with that clip. So what's happening to Stan here is he's going through a process called auditing, which is the process of Dianetics. And that's where Scientology got its start. So L. Ron Hubbard, in around 1952, took Dianetics into Scientology. And this process of auditing is very, very much what we heard there was a series of questions that are supposed to lead back to their root cause. And you get cleared through going through each one of these, finding its source, and then no longer having an issue with it. These engrams are what they're called, these root causes of things. So you have a reactive mind, and that's essentially like a subconscious, or this primal kind of brain that's recording everything that happens to you. And so you would go through some kind of traumatic experience, and they believe that this mind is working even in the womb, prenatally.
Mm-hmm.
So events that happen to your mother before you're born have a direct impact on how you respond to the world in your 40s,
Mm-hmm.
unless you get it checked. And that's why it's so important to go through auditing. It's how you discover these kinds of things.
And how you can erase them or recover from them.
Yeah. I think that episode did a really good job of doing its research and showing a lot of the inside of the church. But in that particular clip right there, I was under the assumption that during auditing, the auditor is not allowed to give you any kind of diagnosis like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like what's told at the end where you're obviously very depressed, we need to help you. They're not allowed to do that. It's simply affirming what the person going through the process says. So there's no leading. There's no, it's against the rules to say, how does that make you feel? It's simply an affirmation. It is, tell me more, or tell me, they say these vague things, like, tell me a secret, and then you just kind of start talking. You just keep repeating that until they get deeper and deeper. You get them comfortable. Or you say, tell me something I could share about you with somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just blurt something out and they just keep going along this list. But at no point would they say, oh, you're obviously very sad.
Meanwhile, you are holding on to the cans here.
Is that part of the first?
That's
step?
They have their stress test. It's the Oxford. They have some fake name for it. I'll find it at some point here and bring it up. But if you're walking through a mall and someone says, "Hey, would you like a free stress test?" That's a Scientologist
I've
trying
seen
to
that one time.
get you hooked up.
Mm-hmm.
So they have the device, the E-meter, which is supposed to. It's not a lie detector. It's a truth detector.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the lines that I heard.
Nice.
Essentially, it's a reflex response or a reflex meter.
Mm-hmm.
So as you're holding on to these things, if in the BBC documentary, a few defectors from the church, the guys that were high up, guys that used to audit people, they bring in this e-meter and they're going to do a session with the host of the BBC show. And just holding on to it, and there's a little needle that's like moving on this little gauge, and then the guy performing the audit pinches the host, and then the needle jumps.
Mm-hmm.
So then he stands back and says, "Now I want you to recall and focus on that sensation of being pinched." And then, of course, the needle moves again.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have this device that is just it's such an easy way to dupe someone who is ready to be duped.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it has E-meter stands for this wonderful phrase. It's the Hubbard electronic psycho. Let me find it here.
Yeah, but essentially they're trying to bring in this element of science. Like it's based on technology. There's real results. You saw when I pinched you, it jumped, and now when I asked you to recall that, then you jumped. And then we can begin this line of questioning.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Hubbard electropsychometer, or E-meter. And what it is essentially, it's two metal cans, just tin-plated tubes that send an electric current through your body.
Isn't that the same thing that you would use on like a treadmill to gauge your
heart rate?
Heartbeat?
Mm-hmm. This thing sends an electric current through your body. And
I
then
see.
the meter rises and falls as you're being asked questions. And that all relates to what the auditor...
Right. And so the idea is that as you answer these questions or you recall memories, and in theory you recall memories from previous lives or like every life you've ever lived, when the needle jumps, there's some blockage there. There's something going on. So now the job is to clear that, whatever that is, so the needle hovers just peacefully in the middle of the meter. And this is where you'll come across a lot of stories of, especially people in the more executive level of the church, going through sessions where it's just you're being yelled at or even physically abused, and you have to keep a straight face or not react and
show no emotion.
Show no emotion and just sit there and take it. I was inspired to rewatch that movie, The Master, which is not a direct one-to-one, but it's a pretty close approximation of how Scientology, or seeing the way that this could work. And
great film on its own.
Great film on its own. Yeah, I wouldn't really say that that's a part of the research I did for this.
Yeah,
but
it's just more entertaining. We watched it too. A very entertaining look at it, especially after doing the research.
Did you guys watch it too?
We started it. We got, I think, halfway through. I think we're gonna finish.
It's a lot longer than I remembered it.
It's a couple hours, yeah. But anyway, so I wouldn't put that out as having been research, but seeing just some of the scenes where Philip Seymour Hoffman's just having Joaquin Phoenix just walk back and forth and touch the window, touch the wall, and it's just bullshit. It's just trying to get this guy to keep doing something.
Just break a spirit.
Break a spirit. Yeah.
He elicits an intense reaction from him, though.
Yeah, for sure. But what does that? There's no
What's the purpose?
No reason.
Yeah.
There's nothing behind it. It's just.
It was his research, though.
Yeah. But any one of us could do that. Just got to grow a sweet mustache. And, join the Navy. But anyway, that's kind of the basic function of the e-meter is to monitor and then help clear response to traumas or pain or anything in the previous life.
Well, I'm as interested as anyone in the real meat of what the processes are, but I think we should at least touch on who L. Ron Hubbard is. Most people know his name and that he is the head or founder of Scientology. But where did he come from? And I'm under the impression that he was a science fiction writer first, and that Dianetics wasn't actually meant to start a religion, but
it was not. No,
became the foundation of it.
I think before we dive into L. Ron Hubbard, I should also say I found a big difference between L. Ron Hubbard. He died in 1986.
Yeah, he was 74.
He died in 1986, and I found that's a big shift moment in the church. So the church before his death, or when he was still running or founding it, it looked a lot different than it does today under David Miscavige, who's running the church now. So
really turned it into the business that we see today. Although it certainly had that aura already.
It was set up to be a business from the beginning. So Hubbard definitely that is part of his legacy. But I do think talking about Hubbard is important. But I also think it's a different animal now.
Yeah, the juicy stuff comes after. But
there's plenty of juicy stuff with Hubbard too. That's for sure. But anyway,
who is this guy?
Hubbard was born in Tilden, Nebraska, and he was the son of a Navy officer who actually ended up becoming ranked fairly high in the Navy, although with just about everything in L. Ron Hubbard's past, it's all very much hyperbole. A lot of stuff gets pushed to the extremes in his own biography. The way that he described his life and wanted to be known was nowhere near the fact of the matter. And how we know this was done through a lot of research from a couple outsiders. Went and found things like his own Navy records, found the plot of land that his grandfather owned that he claimed to have been raised on. They have his childhood diary. And this paints a much different picture of Hubbard than he had painted for himself to his followers. So in Hubbard's history of his life, he was a great many things. He was one of the first nuclear physicists when that was a brand new field. He claimed to have been able to break Broncos at the age of 3. The land that he was raised on in Montana was about a quarter of the size of Montana.
Yeah.
When in fact it was only about 300 and something acres. And he didn't live there for very long. He actually spent a lot of time in Helena and not out on that ranch.
Yeah.
He was not a very good student, particularly at math. His claims of being the first physicist one of the first physicists. Actually goes back to him taking a college course, a pretty elementary college course in physics. And he was an engineering major. And he got an F in that class.
Mm-hmm.
He was really bad at math. And by his own account, actually, he was bad at math. But with his father being in the Navy, he spent quite a bit of time at sea and traveling around internationally. And so that part of his life is true. But the exaggeration comes in on what he did during that time and what he was focused on. So he later claimed that while he was in China and in Guam and all these places overseas, that he learned a great deal from old masters of different religions out there.
Mm-hmm.
That he spent a long time traveling through China and meeting the greats
Mm-hmm.
and comparing minds, learning old Tibetan techniques from the masters and all this stuff. When you read his childhood diary of that time, it paints a complete stark contrast to that. He doesn't mention much about deep thinking or issues of psychology or philosophy or anything, although you can kind of see where the writer in him comes from.
Yeah.
He at this stage is already going back and doctoring accounts of his life in diary entries days later. He actually didn't have very good things to say about China at all. As a matter of fact, a couple of quite racist things to say now. He described Chinese people as gooks and lazy and ignorant. He said, the trouble with China is there are too many chinks here. They smell of all the baths they didn't take. He visited the Great Wall of China, and the only note he made in his diary about it was that it would make a good roller coaster. I mean, really not the kind of stuff, not the kind of stuff of somebody who's learning from the great Zen masters,
Wow.
Although later it is true that he certainly got a lot of their knowledge later in life. It's just the going back and saying, I was 11 when I was thinking about this.
Sitting at the feet of the masters.
Mhm.
I think he also claimed he joined the Navy eventually.
He did, yeah. And he actually got to captain his own ship a couple times and was then revoked of that privilege. He kind of went off and did his own thing.
He led a merry band on Gilligan's Island.
And he did a lot of other things. He claimed to be a great explorer. And he did go to some pretty cool places, but he never did any of the stuff that he would later tell people about. He'd go looking for gold, but then when he told people about his trips later, it was this great mineralogy expedition that greatly furthered the knowledge that we have of geology.
Yeah, he just took any experience and just amplified it 1,000%.
Everything I've done is very important.
And it kind of shows his genius, really, in a lot of ways, because he could speak so passionately and so quick-wittedly about things that he didn't do. And he believed in them, it seems.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
fully.
Yeah.
One of his, I think this was after Dianetics had been published, so this is a little bit later in his life. He was giving an interview, and he described during his time in the Navy, he had lost his sight. Through the training and practices of Dianetics, he was able to recover his sight.
No way.
100%.
Mhm.
And going back, looking at his official record, it said that he had like fever one time, and then had poor eyesight, like he was nearsighted, like he needed glasses.
Yes.
Yeah.
But his side of that was, I don't need glasses. I cured myself. I regained the power of sight, and he's just selling Dianetics at that point.
Magnificent.
Yeah, he had tried to enter the Naval Academy just out of high school and failed the test initially. And when he went to take it again, his nearsightedness had become such an issue that he didn't qualify. So he didn't even get a chance to take the test a second time. And that's when he went to college.
Yeah.
Became a civil engineer. and the first nuclear physicist.
Of course.
Okay, so all of this aside, because this is not about L. Ron Hubbard, it's simply about what he created, really. And really to talk about his life and all the fascinating intricacies of it, we would need a whole another hour and possibly 2 or 3 weeks.
Barnum situation in our hands.
Yeah.
To do another Barnum
The
here.
runaway Barnum train.
But to go back to the general thought of most people do know, if you do any kind of research into it, he was a science fiction writer first. And Scientology claims that he was so good at it that he was making more money than anyone else had ever at the time. He set a new standard for what you could make as a pulp science fiction writer, when in reality he was making about a penny a word. But he did get quite a lot of stuff published. He had a following. He wrote story after story, all kinds
And they
of
sold too. You can't, I mean, it wasn't like he was not selling. I mean, he wasn't struggling in any way that
It was his career.
it was his career. Yeah. And he was successful. He was selling books.
So
But-
how does this become
So he writes,
fiction?
he writes Dianetics.
Yeah.
And Dianetics is that auditing process that we just talked about.
This is the first evolution of what would become Scientology as a whole.
And it does pretty good, actually. You know, its only real downside at the beginning was how scientific it claimed to be, with no other research done than
It wasn't
Hubbard's
peer-reviewed
own.
or-
It was, I've done hours and hours of research. This is what I've
And his
found.
claim is that it all comes from his mind. All these
Yeah, he discovered it.
He discovered it.
Mhm.
Or rediscovered it, I guess.
Yeah,
It's
and what this turns into,
what is the subline? Dianetics, the new science of the mind.
there was the modern science of mental health.
Modern science of mental health. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So from the very get-go, he's pushing this is a scientific method, researched. It's just steeped in fact.
Mhm.
And people eat it up, really.
People, I also think too, this is the nuclear age now, ushered in a new dawn for humanity. Stuff. I mean,
you would expect that we would have the technology then that an e-meter would be able to find out where your problems are. It made sense in the time.
Yeah.
You wanted this futuristic world. I mean, you look at advertising and marketing at the time, it was how weird and crazy these future cars are going to be, this Jetsons kind of world that was
just around the corner.
where a thing would show up, but it didn't really match any of that, but you had to, so it would be easy to believe that this thing could tell you where your problems were.
And, I was reading a biography about a real nuclear physicist just a month ago. And before the atom bomb was developed, the term physicist wasn't even, it wasn't real. It didn't exist yet. You were like a mathematician. And then now it's just this cutting edge field. It was the physicist. That's an important distinction too. It wasn't necessarily the scientist that created the atom bomb. It was the physicist that did it. So it's this hot topic.
Yeah.
Science all of a sudden is like
so much
it's
power, and
so
we don't
much power.
really understand how it comes to be or where it comes from or how they're doing what they're doing, but we know that they can create such extraordinary results.
Before the war, a scientist is like a nerdy guy mixing a couple chemicals in a lab. Now all of a sudden you can destroy cities or save the planet through technology.
Yeah.
So
and we had no
this
idea
comes
what
along.
radiation really did to you.
Right.
And
but this comes along at the perfect time.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's science. Believe it. It's a pretty easy sell.
Unfortunately, it ends up not being that easy to sustain. The FDA gets really upset about it, and they more or less shut it down as practicing therapy without a license, and it starts to fall because of that, because he just can't do it. It is illegal. He is just curing people of things like arthritis, depression, and leukemia, all with the same exact program. And so it starts to falter then, and it gets eaten up into what the Church of Scientology, which is essentially just the next step after that to keep it afloat, really was.
And it will circumvent the FDA.
Yeah, if
It's
it's
a
a
religious
spiritual
practice.
belief, yeah, then it doesn't have to be
FDA
claimed as, yeah. On top of it also having the added benefit of being tax-free. And so it becomes a not-for-profit, pay for services. It's a spiritual donation, essentially.
It's a fixed donation.
Fixed donation, yeah.
So in order to receive the information, in order to take the courses or to be educated in the church, is a fixed donation. And, also known as like a price.
Yeah.
Price tag.
Fixed
It's
donation.
a fixed donation you have to pay. And
Semantics.
it's, if you think about a pyramid scheme or a scam, this is almost like just tailor-made.
Kind of textbook.
Yeah,
Well, it even works on the same side that they have people on the street getting commission for bringing people in.
Yeah.
And they see that as part of the business. They tell people you can make money hand over fist just by bringing people in.
So if you sign
Your
someone
field-
up, you get 10% of their sign-up costs, whatever you get there.
Yeah, they get 15%,
15%.
which actually ends up being quite a bit of money now from 10% commission to recruiters. I guess it is 10%. Field staff members is what they call them.
Mhm.
Hey, here's just a quote from L. Ron Hubbard. Take it cash in advance, guarantee nothing. Make sure you stress its spiritual slant and value. Steer clear of promising cures, and don't rush them into auditing. They'll beg for it soon enough. Actually do this to be of service to man. Try to give it away. You'll find you can't. Don't use this just because it's a pre-clear getter. It's a lot more than that. It will put you in financial condition and get your church going.
So when does this really start to take off?
56 was Dianetics, or was that the formation of the church?
I think 1950 was when
52 is when the Scientology shows up. So
Okay.
Dianetics has been around for a little bit. And then it becomes a religion in 1953, has the Church of Scientology in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
So to go back to what's happening to Stan in that South Park episode is once he pays for Scientology services to help him with his depression.
It's the Oxford capacity analysis. I caught that up. So they throw in a little. There's no affiliation to Oxford University whatsoever. So
Oxford.
The Oxford capacity analysis, or the stress test that Stan takes.
So you then, what you pay for next is a thing called the communications course. And this is a series of steps that is supposed to cure you of the malady that you have. And from what I was reading in John Attack's book, he was in the field for a while. And what he was trying to do was to get people into the door by finding out whatever their ailment or malady was, and then telling them that Scientology had a cure for it. And it didn't matter what it was the communication course. This is step one. So each one of these levels, each one costs money.
Mm-hmm.
You have no idea what they are until you start doing them. As with everything in the church, if you're a level ahead of somebody, it is forbidden to tell them what occurs in the next one. So all you know is that results are promised, and you have no idea what the process is. The very first thing you'll do is a thing called OTTRO, or zero. I don't know. It's hard to tell. We're just going to say OTTRO. And that is two people, two initiates, sit facing each other with their eyes closed, no speaking or moving. It's similar to meditation. It's supposed to help focus attention on the person, and this is done for hours without pause.
So this is a recruiter and a recruitee?
Two recruitees, and then there's
Okay.
there's somebody overseeing it,
Okay.
a coach. So after you've done this and passed this course, pay another set of money to do TRO, probably TR0. And that is the exact same as before, but with your eyes open. And you do this for hours without pause. And then you get into TR0 bull bait, which is one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where you sit and stare at each other again, except one student baits the other verbally and with gestures. And that is done until there is no reaction. And this is where Some people refer to Scientologists as starers. That's why you can tell a Scientologist on the street is because they will stare intently into your eyes without blinking or showing emotion while they talk. That's because they've been trained for hours to be able to do this.
Yeah.
Show no reaction to any kind of baiting. Now, why this would be so important to do right off the bat is an interesting question.
Yeah.
Why this is the very first step for somebody with leukemia, somebody with arthritis, somebody with
Stage fright.
anxiety, to spend the first weeks of your process learning how to not show emotion or react.
And also how to
Mhm.
how to sit still and listen
Mhm.
and accept anything that's being said to you.
Now, what you get out of this is you find what does move you the most.
Mhm.
You find where those weak parts are. Somebody making fun of your hair, the style that you wear, or somebody brings up a family member and it just elicits a response no matter how hard you try not
And
to.
once you respond,
You start over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but now they're keyed in on what
Mm-hmm.
what you do respond to.
Yeah. So you can imagine there's benefit in that. After you go through the bull baiting, which not only do you have to go through, but you have to do to somebody else, you get to do TR1, where the student will read lines at random from Alice in Wonderland to a coach for hours. And this is to teach the student to speak audibly and coherently to the coach. It is so that no matter what it is that's coming out of your mouth, it is directed specifically towards a person.
What is the ultimate purpose of that?
That as you get deeper and deeper and deeper, you have to take more and more courses
Mm-hmm.
as things come up. Or the idea is that this is a never-ending cycle,
Mm-hmm.
and it's sold as you're taking courses. These courses are now going to unlock other things that are blocking you from being a free being, and only by taking more courses, or no, that course didn't cover it. This course is going to cover it. So you need to take this course next. But you can't take that course until you take this course. We're going to get you there. We're going to get you all the way to the top. You're going to be totally clear. You're going to be an operating demon.
Mhm.
So it becomes this all-consuming process of,
Mhm.
well, okay, so I have a lot of work to do. We've got a lot of work to do. Got to keep doing this. And you're taking these courses that are, I mean, I guess in some ways it could be like it's a course for business management or a course for public speaking or something like that. But you're really just taking the course because you need to take this course to take the next course.
Mm-hmm. So what they're doing to you here, what they're really priming you to do is, so we have to define clear and pre-clear. And this is the first initial step. So we kind of jumped the gun there, but it didn't really need to come up for those first 4 courses. So the idea is you have these engrams, which you brought up in the auditing. That's what auditing is trying to remove you from. And a pre-clear is somebody who is, their reactive mind is still influenced by these engrams. You still sort of have this primal thought and these reactive behaviors. And the whole point of auditing is to get you to a place called clear, which is where you think entirely logically, and you no longer have these past engrams that block you from full, complete thought.
You'll have perfect recall, the perfect memory.
You'll remember your past lives. Yeah. And so that's really the initial goal of a Scientology initiate is you want to become clear.
I want to throw in one little anecdote from L. Ron Hubbard here, just saying clear. The first time, this is I think in the 50s, I think it was in England where they had the manor house in England.
St. Hill.
That's it. He gave this like public demonstration where they invited the press, had this event, and brought this young woman out who he claimed is the first person who is now clear. Like, having gone through this process, she is clear, and she, has recall. She's free of engrams, and someone in the audience calls out and asks L. Ron Hubbard to turn away from her, and then he asks the young woman, "What color is his tie?" She couldn't remember.
That's great.
Mhm.
And then asked, what's the first line of page 217 of your physics
Yeah.
book? And she, of course, she can't remember it.
Mhm.
So I heard that in one of the documentaries. And I was, oh my god.
That's awesome.
Anyway,
But that's the state you theoretically are going
Yeah.
for. You're
Yeah.
trying to get to this state of real enlightenment, really, and that's kind of part of the religious side of it too. Is it does pertain to enlightenment. You're looking for this to exteriorize yourself from your body, to have your soul, your real soul, be awakened. But what they're doing in this communication course, and I'm fairly certain that the initiate doesn't quite understand this yet, is they're not just preparing you to go through auditing, which is how you become clear. It isn't this course. This course is preparing you not really to go through auditing, but to become an auditor yourself.
Mhm.
And that's what this is doing. Because the next step, after reading the lines from Alice in Wonderland, is you really start to learn how to go through the auditing process without even knowing what that is yet. The next step, TR2, deals with acknowledgments. And now the coach reads lines from Alice in Wonderland to you, and the student acknowledges with a good, thank you, or an okay. And this ends the cycle of communication. So as you're auditing, somebody will say something. They'll say, tell me a secret. They'll say, and you say, thank you. End of, now we're doing the next one.
Okay.
So you do that for a while until you're real good at that, right? Which is a very difficult thing to learn, I'm sure, how to end the cycle of communication. And in TR3, the student learns to repeat all unanswered questions without variation. So you ask a question, and it's something very simple, at least in the training booklet here. It's the example I was given was something like, do birds fly? So I asked that to you as a coach. I'm the initiator. Do birds fly? You deviate from the question, or you answer it, or somehow you don't respond, and you just repeat it in its exact wording until you get a response. Do birds fly? Do birds fly? And then we move on to TR4, which is the end of the communication course, and you guys have probably spotted a pattern here. They do that again.
Yep.
But this time, TR4 teaches the student to handle originations made by the coach. Now that's some pretty funny verbiage, some real interesting wording for what an origination is when I ask the question, do birds fly? And you respond with something off topic, like, it's hot in here. You can then respond with, I'll open a window, and go right back to the question in its exact wording. Open the window for you. Now do birds fly? So that's it.
Yeah.
That's the end of the whole course. And this takes a long time to get through. And you spend a lot of money. Each course costs a lot of money. And if you don't do it right, you have to redo the course and pay the money again. It takes hours out of your day. And this is where a lot of initiates will then become field members to earn a little bit extra income. And they live in essentially a boarding house in the church.
Mm-hmm.
They can't afford to keep real jobs up at this point. Sure, there are plenty who go through this kind of thing and have the sort of money to throw at it. But somebody like me would go into debt so fast in this program and be so far over my head with enlightenment just around the corner and just for another $2,400.
There's a great documentary I found on YouTube called Inside the Scientology Celebrity Center, an Ex-Parishioner Reveals All. And it's this young guy, Steve Mango, great name. And he was a young actor that moved to LA and ended up taking a stress test and was thinking, well, maybe this could help my career.
Mm-hmm.
I could get in here and get some training, and it could help open some doors for me. I'm new in town. And they prey on actors showing up to LA. So in the back of the casting, or if you're in line at Central Casting, they're out in the line, trolling the line. But he was talking about getting hit up by registrars every day. Basically, it's just cashiers. or the field agents basically for the church, trying to get you to buy more courses, buy more stuff, make more donations. That's their life, is to get you to spend money.
It's incredible sales pitching.
Yeah, and it is, and I mean, not even sales pitching, but like forcing. They'll lock the door and keep you there for 10 hours and just be hitting you up for cash. And he was saying, yeah, sometimes you just break down and think, okay, I'll donate $1,000. And sometimes you're not even donating money for a course. You're just donating money to the church.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy is an actor, new in LA. He's not rolling in it. You know, he's doing like a little bit of extra work once or twice a year. I mean, he's working some crappy jobs. At one point in this documentary, he talks about sometimes these people that are trying to get money from you will surround you. There'll be more than just one person. It's not like a one-on-one thing. It's them. And then they're trying to bait you as well by, maybe verbally abusing you or trying to butter you up a little bit and saying, you're so close. Once you do this, we're going to send you to Flag, and you're going to take all these other courses, or, this is really going to open the door for you. We're going to get you cleared and clear the whole planet. And he said that at one point, there was 10 of them. They all had iPads around them. And he said, I don't have any money. Do you have any investments? Do you have any gold bullion? He's like, no, I don't have any of that stuff. Do you have, how much money do you have in your checking account? Oh my. Do you have any credit cards? Like, no, I don't have any credit cards. So all 10 of them get his information from him. And then they start running credit apps, trying to open credit cards in his name. And
oh my God.
They all do it at the same time, because if you applied for a credit card every single day for like a week or two, credit score companies would be like, we're not giving you 10 credit cards.
Yeah.
But if you do it all at once, there's a lag in the system. So you might actually get cleared for 10 credit cards at once, and then you just turn that number. They already have your information, and they'll just turn that into immediate debt. What? If you have 2.5 hours, you don't need to watch all 2.5 hours. But Inside the Scientology Celebrity Center, an ex-parishioner reveals all. Steve Mango, it's all on YouTube. And it's essentially 2.5 hours of this guy describing getting hit up for money all the time.
Unbelievable. Wow.
All the time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we should talk about the bridge to total freedom. It's kind of...
Yeah, so this is what's happening in between the communication course and the course that comes next.
Yeah.
So during this time, not only are you paying all this money for the communication course, but you're also spending time there and spending money on being audited on your way to becoming clear. And so that goes into this bridge to total freedom, the end game, really, or the series of steps that you need to take to go from pre-clear all the way to the real end of Scientology.
Which doesn't exist.
Yeah. They keep adding things, don't they?
Yeah.
I would like to mention real fast, though, before we get too far away from my description of the communication course, the nature of this being what it is, they do such a good job of hiding the true course material that what I have here is simply John Attack's verbatim steps from the late 70s. So all of those things easily could have changed by now. When you look up descriptions of them on the internet, what you find is roughly an idea of what that end game is supposed to be, but not what they're actually doing. So that was the only thing I read where he had pages explaining what they're doing in the room. Like I said, that can't be taken as fact for what they're doing now, just at least what they were doing then. And all of these abbreviations probably have changed. There might be more steps, less steps, but that's the comm course. While you're doing this, you're doing the auditing, going clear. And that's when things start to take a really interesting turn.
Yeah.
Once you're clear, which for a long time and for most of the initiates is the goal, you spend, and nowadays the money that I've seen, roughly $130,000 to reach clear. This has been your goal the entire time. Once you reach clear, you learn about thetans.
And that 130 grand, that's basically for the courses. That's not including any additional donation, or, if they max out some credit cards, or, you got your grandma to give you 50 grand, because that's going to really help open up this new center in El Salvador. I mean, that's like the base. That's the base one, which I would be surprised if anyone got to be clear by only spending $130,000.
So we've been talking about levels, and I think a lot of people know of OT levels. So what is the idea of clear?
So you have to become clear to start taking OT courses.
Okay.
You can't do that until you become a clear. So originally, you had to go through all of this and be deemed clear by so many hours of auditing. And then once you became clear, you were then allowed to start these OT levels, operating thetan levels. Now,
so what is a thetan?
A thetan is
a thetan is you.
At this point, what you get to know is a thetan is a spirit or a soul. But it gets a little bit more convoluted than that, or at least deeper. And even at this point, years in and over $100,000 in, you don't get to know what they really are until you get to OT 3. So you get into the big boy room. You get to do, put on your dad pants and go and start taking the real courses. And even then, you have 2 courses to go before you learn any of the spiritual dogma that is the Church of Scientology.
I want to read WikiLeaks has obtained operating thetan documents of the Church of Scientology. It's a 612-page.
They were more pissed than the government was.
Oh, boy,
at WikiLeaks. Yeah, that's Julian Assange is quoted as saying, like, that's when we knew we were dealing with the real deal.
Real deal.
These guys got mad, and the government was just like, "Oh, please stop!" And they were like, "No, we will shut you down."
Yeah.
And Julian Assange is like, "Okay, you don't seem to understand who we are."
Yeah, right. So, the file is 612 pages. I did not read all of that. But contains instructions. I'm reading directly from WikiLeaks right now. Contains instructions for the 8 different operating thetan levels, including clear and OT8. Most of the documents have been retyped from the original sources. The file does, however, contain some scanned in Hubbard's own handwriting, which also bear his signature. The collection also contains bulletins by Hubbard written for individuals who have passed the according levels. Now, is a quote of Hubbard here. A great many phenomena can happen while doing these drills if they are done honestly. Then he goes on to explain in handwritten notes the drills one must do in order to become OT1. So, now granted, none of us have gone through any of the courses to become clear and get to this point. Maybe you would get set up. This would make more sense. So
from what I've understood is that it's impossible to understand
any of it.
The benefits of this without going through all the steps.
Right.
So we can't have any honest opinion on the matter other than the facts presented because we didn't go through it.
I'm going to read now the drills one must do in order to become OT1 as according to L. Ron Hubbard in his own hand. 1. Walk around and count bodies until you have a cognition. Make a report saying how many you counted and your cognition. 2. Note several large and small female bodies until you have a cognition. Note it down. 3. Note several large and several small male bodies until you have a cognition. Note it down. 4. Final, a tight-packed crowd of people. Write it as a crowd and then as individuals until you have a cognition. Note it down. Do step over until you do.
And this is all OT1.
That's OT1.
So John Attack, when he went through this, had a really hard time understanding what that meant.
Right.
And he had to talk to a couple of his superiors to figure out what it was. And then how it became to make sense to him was that a cognition is a win or someone you feel good about. And even that is hard to understand. I don't know what that means. Now there is, I don't know if it has this in what you're looking at. I think the N phenomena, what you're supposed to get out of OT1.
Oh, I think I do have that. I can find that.
This is the reward that you get for doing this. Is it extroverts a being and brings about an awareness of himself as a thetan in relation to others and the physical universe. The end phenomena of OT1.
Sounds great.
Now, when you sign up for this, you're given it in a manila envelope in a locked briefcase. You can only open it up and read it in a room by yourself. And you sign a waiver. Although I don't think for OT1 or OT2, but before OT3, you sign a waiver.
Yeah.
That says that any harmful effects that might occur from going through this process is your reliability, and you understand the risk of what's about to happen to you. But we don't get there yet. We do OT2.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where you audit. Most of this is self-auditing at this part, solo auditing. You learn how to hold the cans yourself, read the meter, and take notes while auditing yourself. And in OT2, it's just auditing, solo auditing, through tens to hundreds of pages of implant commands, focusing on specific parts of the body. Using the e-meter, the pre-OT, the pre-operating thetan, is supposed to strip away the charge of these implants. So according to Hubbard, when an individual is caught between two opposed possibilities, he becomes confused and incapable of decision or action. And thetans were implanted this way long, long ago. And so you go through all of these implant commands, and they're as simple as to be or not to be, all the way up to just hundreds of pages of opposing commands. And you go through your whole body, auditing those out.
Then we come to OT3.
OT3.
Now, this is,
This is where it gets good.
yeah.
This is where you get the story of Xenu.
Yes.
So here, woo. I guess I'm going to read this again. This is from Hubbard. Okay. So in Hubbard's own handwritten notes, he begins to describe, this is in OT3, you learn the true beginning of Scientology. He begins to describe a series of 76 planets orbiting around larger stars founded 95 million years ago, which he says are visible from here on Earth. From those planets, which were overpopulated by about 250 million people per planet.
I read billion.
Oh, I had million. Maybe it is billion then, which makes more sense. Came a head of the Galactic Federation named Xenu, who solved the overpopulation by sending vast numbers of his people to Earth, somewhere between 75 million and 4 quadrillion years ago.
That's a big
That is a
jump.
large space of time.
Mm-hmm.
And these large stars were only founded 95 million years ago. So 4 quadrillion is...
What does that even...
Hubbard's... Okay, so Hubbard says he... the 76 planets founded 95 million years ago. From those planets that were founded 95 million years ago, somewhere between 75 million and 4 quadrillion, which is way
That's
longer
years?
than 95. Quadrillion is the next set after trillion. So, to give you some frame of reference. So, that must be a typo or something.
That's...
It's such a glaring...
It makes just as much sense as anything else
Right.
so far.
Yeah, but let's just do 75 million, because that's what I'm getting here. 75 million years ago, Xenu brought billions of his people to Earth, then known as TGAC, in DC-8-like spacecraft. They were exactly like the DC-8 plane, except they didn't have the engines. It's the only difference. And he stacked his people around volcanoes and killed them with hydrogen bombs. Now, this is known as Incident 2, and the traumatic memories associated with the thetans in the bodies of these people, of these aliens, this is known as the Wall of Fire, or the R6 implant. Now, after their bodies were destroyed by the hydrogen bombs, the thetans in the bodies adhered to humans, and we still have them today.
It's a soul. Saying it's a soul is kind of the easier way to describe a thetan.
Yeah.
But it's apparently deeper than that. So thetans...
You are a mass collection of thetans.
Yeah, so... Or your body right now is the current form.
Because at some point, they came to Earth, attached themselves to...
So they
like
were in the
cavemen.
bodies... Yeah, they were in the bodies of Xenu's people. His alien the people that he wanted to kill from overpopulation. It's kind of funny. They were rounded up together under the guise of tax auditing. And he brought them all together and then brought them to Earth, put them around volcanoes and blew them up with bombs. And then the thetans from these aliens were released because they get attached to physical bodies, but they themselves are not. And before they adhere themselves to people, they spent something like 36 days. It was 26 days. Anyway, the number doesn't really matter. In what was essentially a movie theater where they were bombarded with propaganda of other creation myths so that they forgot themselves. And that's where we get the story of Jesus and other religious teachings. These thetans were put into a movie theater in 3D for 36 days. And they were implanted with various misleading data, which has to do with God, the devil, everything. All world religions.
Xenu was captured after 6 years of battle. And he was imprisoned and basically he's like in the Phantom Zone right now.
Okay.
So we're good.
Anyway, so these thetans gathered into bodies, and they became known as body thetans. And they are still clinging to and adversely affecting everyone except Scientologists who have performed the necessary steps to remove them. And OT3 is when you begin to do the necessary steps to remove them. And how you do that is you continue to audit, focusing on particular parts of the body to find a body thetan, which is then audited. So at this point, you've gone through all your auditing and become clear. You then audit yourself again for a while. And then you audit yourself again, but with the idea that it is now this soul that you're auditing, trying to get it out. So then you go into OT4.
OT4.
OT drug rundown.
Yeah. This is where individuals are allegedly rid of illegal and legal drugs. Now, Tom Cruise is, he's got to be one of the most famous Scientologists. And I came across a number of clips. You can't type in Scientology.
Oh, yeah.
Number of clips of him saying that they have a better method to treat heroin addiction than methadone. So Scientology has the proven technology to rid drug abuse or free people from drug addiction.
I think it was Kirstie Alley who said that she got over her cocaine addiction because of Scientology, and if she didn't, she would be dead.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, probably would have helped Hoffman.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is kind of where they, although there's other stuff during they do rundowns before you even get the OT level, where that documentary I mentioned before, about inside the Celebrity Center, he was talking about sometimes they're trying to rid these toxins from your body, so they put you in saunas for like 5 hours a day.
Ooh.
You're exercising, and they don't give you water some points. They say, no, you're having fun, like you don't dehydrate. You're that's not dehydration. That's the toxins leaving your body. It's just the pseudoscience kind of approach. Here's a little another quote from Hubbard. As drugs and drug incidents have been so common on the whole track, to simply generally ask for drugs or drug incidents when dealing with BTs, the body thetans, and clusters could cause a total restism. Arrestim? I don't know what that means. Is to stop drug use is to take any previously given drug somatic items or newly list any additional items connected with reading drugs, medicines, etc., and assess for reading somatic item. It's just nonsense. That just doesn't make any sense to me.
Now, there's an account, Hubbard, when he was writing OT3, he wrote a letter to his wife. He was on a boat out at sea on his way to I forget where. He spent a lot of time at sea.
He had to.
A lot of time at sea. And he was writing OT3. And he relayed to his wife in a letter that he was drinking very heavily and on quite a mess of uppers and downers. So while writing OT3, he is very, very intoxicated and found it important so that when he came out with this information, that he would look very disheveled and as if he had gone through much tumult to get this research done. Now, he claimed that he is the only person who has been able to get the information of the story of Xenu and not die.
Mm-hmm. This is a theme in his life, though. I think even when the book right before Dianetics, he had another Excalibur. There's some book called Excalibur or something, and he claimed as publisher that everyone that he let read it had gone insane or killed themselves
or gotten pneumonia.
You
have to sign a waiver that says before you read about this information, you should know that if you haven't gone through the clearing stages, if you aren't prepared, one of the traps of this story, of knowing this information, in a way that it's evolutionary defense, I guess, is it gives you pneumonia. It kills you. Now, I've known about this information for several days.
Yeah.
And I do not have pneumonia.
Doing all right.
Mm-hmm. I also don't have the full story.
Right.
I didn't go, through it through the proper channels.
Yeah. So
I might be missing something. I think we should wrap up the OT levels here, because at this point things get a little interesting. You go through OT4. OT5 is a really amazing thing called the living lightning of life itself. But you're now just doing more auditing of body thetans up until you get to the point where you then do solo audits at home daily. And then OT8 is currently the highest level. And we don't know what that is because it is done on their flagship boat, the flagship service org. You have to go out with the Sea Org on their voyage in order to learn this one. They don't let this one out. What we can see through the history of it, though, is that you more or less just keep doing the same thing, hoping for a better result, and targeting more specific areas. And at the time when John Attack was writing this, he had gotten to OT3. OT4 had just come out, and he wasn't satisfied with the results. Went to the proper channels, his superiors, to inform them. At which point they just told him, we've been hearing that a lot lately, but OT4 is out and that's where you'll get them. He did that, had the same problem, and OT5 was just released. So now you do that. And that's when he said, I'm done. Mm-hmm. OT6 through 8 weren't even out yet. And so now you can imagine you still go through the same thing. And how vested are you at this point? You're years in.
You have to.
Everyone you know is a Scientologist. Everything you know is Scientology. All the money you've made is for Scientology, and you're in great debt for it. How do you get out?
I've finished books and movies that I hated, like in the first 20 minutes or like 20 pages, and had to finish them.
Me too.
That's not even included. That's not mortgaging my house or like 500 grand in, like years and years and years. Mm-hmm. On the Wikipedia page for Operating Thetan, we have a description of OT8 is Truth Revealed, is the title of that level. And here's a little quote here. This solo audited level addresses the primary cause of amnesia on the whole track and lets one see the truth of his own existence.
It's the first actual OT level.
Is the first actual OT level. And brings about a resurgence.
You get this far. Yeah, you get this far.
Brings about a resurgence of power and native abilities for the being himself. This may be done at the flagship service organization only. Now, this is just on the Wikipedia, and I try to find this again, or in other places, but we have a list of unreleased levels, and we have OT9 all the way up to OT15. These are unreleased. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen these anywhere else, so I can't really talk about this, but a couple of the titles of these levels, OT9 is Orders of Magnitude, OT10 is Character, OT11 is Operating, OT12 is Future, and then 13, 14, 15 are unnamed.
So, am I correct that Hubbard was OT9, nobody else ever has been?
Now, this is another big part of this. A lot of the stuff being taught today has come about after Hubbard's death. Uh-huh. Not all of it. I mean, it's all rooted in Hubbard. But one thing that seems to happen quite often is people find new writings. Mm-hmm. Hubbard's lost tapes or writings. There's that famous footage of Tom Cruise getting an award from David Miscavige, and part of this gala event, Miscavige releases that they have put together this package now of all of L. Ron Hubbard's books, updated. They're all revised, because they weren't complete before. So now, no matter what level you're at, basically everyone has to go back to the beginning.
You get to start over.
You get to start all over again. So you might be OT8, like you just finished the OT8 level after however.
Psychic abilities. You remember all of your past lives. You can communicate from your body at will, and yet you got to do it all over again.
Exist outside of your body, so you could go visit your family across country without leaving the living room.
That sounds amazing.
Just have been out. This set. This is I think 18 books, and then 200 something hours of tapes of Hubbard speaking, and just to buy that set was $3,200. That's just to buy the books and the tape. And so now whenever that happens, it's reset, and everyone's progress gets flushed, and you start at the bottom. So Hubbard, I don't think Hubbard was. I guess the assumption is that he would be the highest level.
Yeah, he always was. He learned everything before anybody else.
Right, but he's not going through auditing or taking these courses. He's Genesis. He's the generating the material.
So OT8 comes out 1988. Is that right? And there hasn't been.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
It's only been revised. It hasn't been the new level released to attain.
It's the highest current. Yeah, it's the highest current level. And it was released in 1988. So whether or not there are, again, the secrecy around this organization is just.
So it's important here to put the costs in a perspective, because what I had, and these are rough amounts, but to go from the state of a pre-clear as a total initiate walking into a Scientology church, and then to walk out all the way to OT8, you're looking at roughly $250,000.
I found even more.
And that's just going through each course. That's not doing them over again, spending money in donations, doing any other thing. That's course after course, and that's if it doesn't go up at all.
Yeah, and that's...
And there is a history of price hikes of an enormous magnitude.
And I think $250,000, that is the most conservative estimate of what this... I mean, and almost not even realistic.
The comparison here is to think you want to convert to Judaism or to Catholicism, and you have to spend $130,000 to learn about Adam and Eve. And now we can start working on your enlightenment. But you had to get prepared for the creation. And when you put it into that kind of term, it is a really bizarre system that they have set up. You don't even get to know the information until you're so invested that you will accept it. Because ultimately the story is no crazier or illogical than any other major religion's creation story.
Anybody outside of any religion can look at it and see something that seems nonsensical or strange or even crazy. But you're talking about the story of this ancient alien civilization, and this all comes from L. Ron Hubbard, right?
A science fiction writer.
It is bonkers to me.
One of my favorite redundancies here, or just hypocritical things that happens, is that you go through all these levels, and you have to be so prepared to get this information because it could very well kill you. It'll give you pneumonia if you're not prepared. And Hubbard is quoted here as saying, the OT3 document describes how Hubbard entered the wall of fire and emerged alive, and he said, "I'm probably the only one ever to do so in 75 million years." And then in the 80s, he had written a movie script based around this story. and he wanted to make it a movie that would then be publicly shown of a story that if you're not ready to hear it, will kill you.
Talk about public service, huh?
How does he explain how he knows all this specific information?
Scientific
of
research.
Millions and millions of years ago. And hydrogen bombs and ships that, of course, are kind of like the ones that we know about in modern day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they took him to a movie theater.
Saw a crazy movie
in Xenu's time, the society was set up very much like America in the 50s. As a matter of fact, they wore the same clothes and drove the same cars.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
It was all based off of observation. A lot of this revelation came to him through hypnosis. And a lot of this research that he did was taking people through these Dianetic auditing courses and going through past life hypnosis.
Mm-hmm.
He worded it very differently, but that's essentially what he was doing. And it's actually been kind of eerie reading about a lot of his doctrine and relating it to the course that I just went through.
I was going to ask you about that. I don't know what your reaction would be.
So a lot of this stuff is very, very similar to NLP and hypnotherapy. It's just not, I mean, those things do guarantee results or hope for results, but it's not nearly as expensive, hidden, or promising. The idea is, I can help you out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Let's focus on your subconscious. Let's work on your mind. Let's get into your past. Engrams and auditing is very, very similar to a neurolinguistic programming therapy session. It's very much based around the individual figuring out what is the blockage.
Right.
Now, Dianetics has its own language, just like NLP has its own language, but they started it around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really shocking. Both spawned out of hypnosis.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is making quite a bit more money.
Now, this is...
and promising much, much bigger results.
I found a few different figures for the business side of Scientology, which it is a business.
Absolutely.
And the religious function is just one part of this business. One figure quoted that the church controls in excess of $1 billion of liquid assets, just cash, like cash on hand, making it, I mean, just, you want to talk about a Fortune 500 company. I mean, it's got to be the top.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane to have that much cash. And that's not even including all the properties that they own. I mean, that it's just some property values in the billions.
Mm-hmm.
And they have property all over the place.
Right.
And
Internationally.
internationally too. And then from all their orgs, their organizations, and different groups they have, like these little kind of splinter groups, their annual revenue is something like $500 million. I mean, that's a gross amount. So it's not like it's $500 million cash, but it's stuff that comes in, and then from that they cover expenses and buy new property.
Tax-free.
Tax-free, because it's a religion. So
great business model.
Yeah, it's a perfect business model.
Yeah.
If you're at the top.
Yeah. So one might ask, this costs a lot of money. Who the heck can afford this? And I think that most people know that Scientology has a large celebrity aspect to it. They even have a dedicated celebrity center.
In LA. Yeah,
Right.
but that's not dedicated only. You don't have to be a celebrity to go there.
Okay.
But as part of the draw is they'll say you're going to run into Tom Cruise. And
Right.
I mean, it's...
And haven't they advertised, like, we can help you get your career moving?
They'll say that's the thing. They'll say anything to sell you more services, to sell you more courses. And that's also that I think you would be safe in assuming that the celebrities are spending a lot of money doing this.
Yeah.
But more so than just like the celebrities or their personal money, they're representing and drawing in more people, regular
Exactly.
people. It's not, there are people that have a lot of money that go into Scientology, but it's not all millionaires. I mean, these people that cannot afford
Sure.
$500,000 of services over 5 years.
And
Well-
having celebrities in the public eye, that most people can think of several celebrities that they know are Scientologists. And how many actors do you affiliate with major religions? You know, we all know Tom Cruise,
John Travolta, those are the
Will
two big-
Smith.
Yeah.
Kirstie Alley, Ann Archer. I have a list here of some famous Scientologists who were celebrities. Sonny Bono was before his death. Let's see, we got
Elisabeth Moss from Mad Men.
yep.
Wouldn't have guessed that one.
Chick
I wouldn't
Corea.
either.
Mhm.
See, I wouldn't
Musician.
have guessed that either. Jason Lee is one of my favorite actors, and I'm very curious as to how he got into that whole thing.
Juliette Lewis. She's in quite a few Scientology kind of interviews
Really?
and films.
Giovanni Ribisi is one that I know of. And Beck.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's
Laura Prepon from Orange is the New Black and that 70s show. She's in there.
So obviously you can imagine that having these celebrities sort of on the front is really, really good marketing for Scientology. It's got to be. And you wonder how did this start? How did it become
Do you
the
know how
thing in
long
Hollywood?
this celebrity aspect has been really a part of it?
Well, it wasn't an accident. It was not that...
Well, nothing is, of course.
Well, it wasn't something like Tom Cruise just kind of stumbled in and thought it was the hot thing, although I don't know his history of how he became involved. But what I do know is that in 1955, Hubbard launched a program called Project Celebrity, creating a list of 63 famous people that he asked his followers to target for conversion.
Oh, wow.
And it has ever since been a pretty big part of the image of Scientology, where you would say, I really like Jason Lee.
Mhm.
Something about this works for him. Why not me? He gets me on all these other levels. Maybe what he believes works for me too. You know?
All I really know or can remember from Tom Cruise's start, I think it helped him with his dyslexia. I don't remember if he said it cured it exactly, but that was
Well,
an
the
issue for him
communication
that-
course certainly would have done something like that.
Yeah.
He would have spent a great deal of time reading Alice in Wonderland clearly to another person until he could do that. You know, that makes a lot of sense.
It's an unfortunate thing that, Scientology has a stigma attached to it. So you may look at a person differently if you know that they are a Scientologist.
Mm-hmm.
To each their own.
Yeah, I think no matter what somebody believes, you're going to look at them differently.
But I really do think that this is a cult and not.
Yeah, I mean, I can't help but think, I really like this guy, but he believes this, to me, absolutely insane story, made up story about where we come from. And I just don't get it.
And watching that one documentary about the Celebrity Center, I mean, it was 2.5 hours long, the documentary long.
Yeah.
And it's just this guy repeating over and over again. Then this guy asked me, so I donated, he's donating money. He doesn't have any money. He's like, I donated $1,000 today. And then, we had this event. They say, oh, it's no pressure, just come, we're going to have dinner. And then they pull you out and they say, we need $10,000 today to do this. And I kept looking at the clock on this documentary and thinking, at what point do you say this is a scam? Like, you're just hitting me up for money.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about the religious belief. It's not a religious belief. It's not. And whatever benefit you get out of taking these courses, you've got to be putting yourself into debt. I mean, it's.
And the amount of time.
Yeah. I personally am an atheist, and I have been my entire life, as far as I can remember.
My whole thinking life.
Yeah.
As soon as I developed the powers of reason.
Yeah,
That's a George Carlin quote.
So, I mean, I was raised Catholic. I was kind of dragged to church for the first, throughout my teenage years at least, and then, just got kind of got out of it, got free from it. So I don't think I'm approaching Scientology and I'm not bashing it as a religion any more than I would any other belief system.
Yeah.
And not I'm not saying that people don't have a right to choose what they believe or to believe in what they believe.
Sure.
But the stark difference for me with this is
it really stands out.
the pyramid scheme and just
The amount of money it takes to even learn the doctrines.
and it's a fixed
the
donation.
difference.
It's such to me is such a blatant scam and like just money making scheme that people fall for. And watching this guy too, I'm glad he has this documentary on YouTube, and I feel really bad for him. And he's being harassed still. You know, he's getting 40 phone calls a day, every day, because they just don't let go. And that's part of the doctrine is if you aren't willing to take this message, there's something wrong with you. We need to help you.
Yeah.
So I feel bad for him, but at the same time, you idiot. You absolute idiot. How do you get into that position?
I think
Can't imagine.
you wonder how these people can believe this story.
Yeah.
You know, but that's to confuse the whole thing. The reality of it is that story comes so deep into the process that to be a Scientologist is not to believe in Xenu.
Right.
It is not. It's a very, very small part, and it's really just sort of an explanation of the things that you've been doing before and the beginning of the next step of doing them, but to a higher power, doing them to a higher degree. And I think, especially in the celebrity status or the celebrity world, and probably through the rest of the whole culture, it is very much a society thing, as much as it is a religion or a faith. You're there because you believe in this whole society that gets built around you, and not just the processes themselves or the creation myth of it or Hubbard or the money.
The hook is helping yourself and helping the world, helping other people.
You watch Tom Cruise talk about it, and he genuinely believes with a whole lot of faith and a lot of energy that he is helping the world, that Scientology helps the world. And that's a beautiful thing, you know, just as much as any other religion makes the same claim. Yeah. And as long as you believe something so much that you're willing to help people out, it's a positive thing. But when it costs money to be helped is where sort of an issue starts to red flags for me. I look at every other major religion, and sure, there is the donation side of it. It costs a little bit of money, but you're never forced to. Right. You give out of faith and a communal service to your local church. Yeah. You don't give like people do, of course, but you don't give money to the whole church. You give your money to your church, local. And then there's never any pressure to do that other than, you know, like you get the plate passed around, right? You know, that kind of thing. But it's
I think what you just said about, you know, paying to be helped.
You don't pay to walk in.
You can say that about like a medical surgery, you know, and like it's expensive. Yeah. You know, even with insurance, I mean, it's expensive. You want to get help. The difference is if you go and have a tumor removed, the tumor is cut out of you by someone who knows what a tumor is, how it's affecting your body, and how to get rid of it and how to treat it. Scientology, you would go to medical school, you would learn about the tumor, and then after spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical school, not have the ability to cut yourself open and cut out the tumor. Yeah. Like you would still have the tumor in there. You know, and you would be forced to pay money for no actual, nothing's changed. Nothing about you has changed. Apart from your belief that you're helping yourself and you're helping the world. I don't know. I guess I can understand how, and they start you off small too. It's not like the first day they hit you for $10,000. Yeah. It's $25 or it's free the first thing. Then the next one's $50. And the next one's $75. And, you know, but then a year into it and it's countless hours and you feel like you're being affected in a positive way.
Well, this podcast could be 2.5 hours if we
It could be
talking.
2 weeks. I mean,
Yeah.
and we have just barely scratched the surface.
Well, I think what we would like to do is wrap up this episode now, and but we have some more to talk about, and I think we're going to do a little bonus episode, including a firsthand account by our very own Darren.
Mm-hmm.
So it's if you have further interest, we've got more for you coming up.
Just to wrap it up, are there any loose ends here? Anything that you can think of?
Oh,
Yeah, I mean,
Any glaring oversights?
as far
any big
as
questions on
as
your
far as
side?
the main bulk of the history, I think we've done about as well as we can.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you really go through it, there's only so much you can really know on the outside.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, though.
this would have been an interesting one to bring in someone who was a Scientologist.
Absolutely. And I was thinking,
Do you know any?
also would have been
That's the
interesting to all like go take a personality test or whatever you can do initially for free, just to see for yourself.
Yeah.
The problem is
I'm
that
terrified of it.
once, well, we can get into more to that in
Yes.
the bonus episodes.
Let's do that.
So let's wrap this up. I hope it's a very difficult subject to talk about clearly because it is just layer upon layer upon layer of information. It's designed to be kind of convoluted and confusing.
Well, and you have to learn so much new terminology.
Yeah.
There's a lot of new, completely original thoughts that you have to acclimate yourself for before you can even start learning about the thing. So I hope we've done a good enough job of that, clearing up any kind of misconceptions, at least the best that we can from an outside
Or at least
perspective.
just not creating even more misconceptions. I mean,
Well, you could be more confused
I'd
by
be
now.
happy with that. It is a confusing.
I'm fairly certain I'm more confused about a lot of things after this week.
Yeah.
Yeah. The more I learn, the more I just had no idea what the hell is going on anymore.
Well, I think that's the whole point.
Yeah. I will say it's a subject that if it comes up in the news in the future or I come across it, I will immediately, like, my ears will pick up and I will focus in on it.
Yeah, I'm looking for the next litigation, the next scandal. The next,
And I think anyone listening to this, there's a lot of stuff, I mean, just on the internet right now, just on YouTube, that I found that if I was doing something, like, I could just have it on in the background and listen to it, and it's just people's accounts, and it is like a spy thriller in some ways, or a sci-fi story, something like that. It is interesting stuff.
And as I listened to you recount the Xenu tale, I was picturing that a very well-designed depiction of it in that South Park episode. If you have not seen that South Park episode, I believe it's from season 9. I mean, it's very entertaining on its own, but
trapped in a closet.
Yeah,
I think they were able to do very clearly in a half an hour and 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
Yeah.
What we've taken the better part of
it really
two.
It makes you go, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about next week, guys?
So we just had a little powwow, and I think next week we're going to cover the kidney and the function of the kidney in the body. I don't think we need to limit this to human kidneys, right? Or
No, I'd be curious to know who or what has one and what doesn't.
Yeah.
I'm assuming mammals.
You know,
I'm
really bad with organs, so this is going to be kind of fun for me.
Okay.
You know, organs
now
never really been my thing.
Yeah, and I think this is something I've been thinking about. A friend of mine actually is having some problems with his kidneys, like they're functioning at less than 50%.
Ooh.
Now, I know a few things. I think I know a few things about the kidney and the function of the kidney in the body. And one is, I think it filters the blood.
It filters something, I think.
And I think you can exist
With
one, or even like a quarter of one. Like as long as it's healthy.
I wonder what determines a healthy kidney or not. Like what preventative measures can you take to keep your kidney healthy?
My friend was telling me about some of his trips to the doctor, where one thing that he described was, if you go in for a kidney transplant, I think the assumption is, like they cut out the bad kidneys, they put
Uh-huh.
in a new kidney and plug and play. What he said is they leave in the bad kidneys and then kind of just
Unplug it? Like what?
add on the good kidney to a bad kidney, basically. So it's just like,
Oh, you just get double kidney?
I cannot wait to look into that.
And kidney stones. I've been
Yeah?
told by some older gentlemen that it is the most excruciating pain that they have ever felt in their life.
And
And this comes from a man who's been shot and stabbed several times.
that's pretty rough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a kidney stone, I think it's calcium, a calcium buildup or
I think so.
deposit, and
hmm
it hardens.
It comes out your pee hole.
Yeah, I don't need that.
So,
I think
how do we prevent those? That's
in the Green Mile, it's piss and razor blades. It's
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
the quote.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, all I really know at this point, the only thing I can say with any kind of certainty is that it's shaped like a legume.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And I think it's brown.
big old bean.
But I'm just
That could
making
be the
that up.
bean.
Yeah,
That could just be the
it could
bean.
just be the bean. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well,
So
Good stuff.
tune in next week. We will be covering the kidney.
mhm.
I look forward to it.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a fun and I hope surprising departure from the bigger topics we've covered. And I think it's going to be kind of fun to see how big would on the outside be a fairly simple
Mhm.
thing to research.
I'm excited to see what it is that's interesting about this topic.
Yeah, I think that's what I was.
We're going to find fascinating stuff, but I can't tell you what it is yet.
What's
I have
gonna
no
blow your
idea.
mind?
Yeah.
Something's going to blow our minds.
Sure.
Something's going on down there,
Yeah.
and we're going to find out what. I'm Martin Wallace.
I'm Darren McCarthy.
I'm Dan Fury.
This has been The Fundamentals.